Hello and welcome to Tudor House. My name's Andy. I'm part of the education team here at Tudor House and Garden, and in this short video we're going to be talking about Tudor House's links with probably the most famous ship of the 16th century, the Mary Rose. The Mary Rose was a warship that belonged to King Henry VIII's navy. She was actually his favourite warship, and he was watching on in July 1545 when she was in combat with the French in a battle called the Battle of the Solent, and she foundered. She sank with great, enormous loss of life. Now, she didn't actually sink that deep. She went down about 12 metres. And so in 1982, the Mary Rose was raised from her depths, and she's now in a purpose-built museum down in Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. If you get a chance, please do go and see her. It's really, really worth doing. So, what's that got to do with Tudor House? Well, one of the first owners in the Tudor period was a man called John Daltrey. And here in the garden of Tudor House, there are heraldic symbols slightly hidden by the summer growth of the vines there. But what we have is a unicorn, and that was the symbol of Sir John Daltrey. And like many influential men of that time, he had lots of different jobs that he did in service of his monarch. He was the parliamentary burgess, for example. He was responsible for the upkeep of the medieval walls, for example. And he was also what's known as a victualler of ships, which essentially meant that he was given the task of building these great vessels. We know from records that he built two of them. One of them was called the Peter Pomegranate, and the pomegranate was the symbol of Catherine of Aragon. When he divorced Catherine of Aragon, he renamed the ship, or the ship was renamed simply to the Peter. But the other ship was indeed the Mary Rose. So that's one connection. And the next tentative, possible, but I would argue founded in historic evidence, is this cannon. It's been in Southampton for many centuries. 200 or so years ago, when an antiquarian called Henry Englefield visited Southampton, he talks about it. He talks about it being very fine and curious. In those days it stood on the platform, which is close to God's House Tower. It is impressive. The gun is called a demi-culverin, and we can see on it that there is an inscription that has been cast onto the gun itself. So it tells us who it was made for, Henry VIII. It tells us a little bit about how he saw himself defender of the faith and king of England and France and so on. And it also tells us the year that it was made, and that's 1542. So 3 years before the Mary Rose sank. Down at the bottom of the barrel, the maker is also named too, which is Arcanus of Cesena. That's an Italian name. However, they were a family of gun founders who were based in London rather than Italy. So they weren't shipping their guns over to England from Italy. What's this got to do with the Mary Rose? Well, when Mary Rose sank, because she wasn't very deep, there were plans pretty much from the off to try and raise her. It didn't seem insurmountable, it seemed possible. And the way that you would do this is hire divers, often pearl divers, who could hold their breath for a long time, to go down and find bits of the ship and then attach ropes to them, which were on barges, and then you would potentially be able to raise this massive vessel. Now that didn't happen, but we do know that 2 years later, 1547, they made more efforts to take guns, ordnances, equipment from the Mary Rose, because otherwise they were just rusting. It would be a waste of money. So they hired an Italian man called Piero Corsi, who had a diver called Jacques Francis, who went on the Mary Rose to lift things up. Fast forward to later in that year, and both of those individuals are found in Southampton. In fact, Piero Corsi is in the law courts. He's been accused of essentially stealing some of the salvage from one of his customers. And into the law court walks his defence witness, which is Jacques Francis. Jacques Francis is the first African man to feature in an English court of law. It's really, really interesting. The point is, we can place them in Southampton in that time. This cannon looks like the sort of one you would have on the Mary Rose. Finally, what of Arcanus of Cesena? Well, we know that they did build guns for the Mary Rose. So perhaps this is one that was lifted from the Mary Rose in 1547, brought to Southampton by Piero Corsi, and has remained here ever since. That's a pretty exciting connection. Thank you very, very much for watching.